So for the back of the tunic, you're going to have the main body panel, and then you're going to have the interior and the exterior yoke. Okay, we're going to begin by gathering the fabric with those long stitches approximately 2.5 inches from either side of that top edge where you have the armhole notches. So just remember to increase your stitch length and then run 2 rows of gathering stitches. And then just like the front, you're going to pull on those long threads and bring the gathers into the center. And then bring over the back yoke that you would like facing outward, and take those shoulder seams and press them inward 3/8 of an inch. And then you're going to turn that right sides facing, so the shoulders will be down temporarily, and go ahead and align those outer corners first, and then you can gently expand that fabric so that that yoke lays flat, and then put a couple more pins in there before you turn that up and adjust those gathers. Once you're happy with how that is lying, then you just go ahead and stitch across there with the 3/8 of an inch, and don't forget to reduce your stitch length. And then once you have that attached, you can go back and remove any gathering stitches that you can see. Okay, and then we're going to trim this seam here and press that up. We're working from the back side here. We're going to take that second yoke, which will go on the interior against the body. We're going to press up that bottom edge 3/8 of an inch, and then position that right side up, just enough to cover that seam and any stitching. And then go ahead and pin that a little higher so that when we flip this over and stitch, we don't catch those pins in our stitch line. So now we're going to stitch from the front across there. This would be top stitching on the front, so stitch very close to this line or seam, and that will secure that underlining or that interior yoke to these panels. This is what it looks like along the interior, and then this is the front there. Now we want to go ahead and bring back over the actual front of the tunic. This is the back of the tunic here, and we want to turn it around so that it is wrong side facing up. And then this is the front of the tunic, and it should be right side facing up. And you are going to take that interior of the back and line that up with the front. And that's where those little darts will come in very handy. Go ahead and pin that, and then stitch across there to attach. You're going to repeat that process for the other shoulder, lining up the dart and then stitching across to attach. The back looks like this, and that facing should be dropped down. And then you just attach those two shoulders at the top. Go ahead and trim that up. And then open this like this. And this is the next aha moment. This rear yoke comes up with those folded shoulder seams and hides that seam that you just created. So bring this up just so it covers all of those seams and secure that with some pins. Alright, and then bring that back lying flat and make sure that you're happy with how that looks. You definitely want to make sure it's hiding all of that stitching but still looks straight and even. And once you're pleased, then put this up on the machine deck and secure that back yoke at the shoulder seam. For the shoulder seams, you're going to want to remove that machine deck there and then make sure you don't have anything else caught up under there. Right, that's what it looks like on the front or the exterior, and this is what it looks like underneath. So you can see how that offers you nice finished interior seams. So far we have all the seams finished nicely. Okay, now we just want to align this back neckline as best we can. It may be slightly smaller at this point, and that's fine because we can trim it and we can encase it in the neck trim. But we want to try and flatten that out and then just put a row of stay stitching, which are the long stitches, no back stitch, along there to hold that all in place. Okay, so you can see how I have a little bit of difference there in the neckline. I'm going to go ahead now and carefully even that up. Okay, then I want to turn it inside out so that the interior is facing out, and I want to take the neckline casing, which is cut on the bias, which means we have a lot of stretch there. The grain, you may be able to see, is running at an angle on this, and therefore the piece will stretch, and that's what we're going to need around a neckline there. One side of this neck casing is folded over and pressed 3/8 of an inch, and so working from this underside here, the press part will be lower. You're just going to leave a little bit of overlap there because we need to be able to tuck that end over to finish it nice. So 1/2 inch to 3/8 of an inch is ideal, and just begin lining up that top edge and pinning that as you go around. And because this strip is cut on the bias, you can and should pull that to stretch it. Okay, so that should be pinned around with just a little bit of overlap there on each end. And then you can go ahead with a narrow seam allowance there, stitch all the way around that top edge to secure that. All right, then once you have that attached, go ahead and turn the tunic around to the front, and you should now be able to bring that. You may have to trim up the neckline, but then you'll be able to bring that over and pin that in place like binding to encase that seam. I am going to go ahead and trim mine up. And then you just fold that over and begin pinning all the way around. Okay, and when you get to these ends here, you want to tuck them in so you can hide those raw edges. Once you're happy with how that trim looks, then you go ahead with this super narrow top stitch and go all the way around to secure that. Okay, and now the binding is attached to the neckline, and now it is time to sew up these side seams, and you're going to align those darts and the tops and the bottoms of your tunic. Now I want to use a French seam so that my seams are totally encased and finished. So first I'm going to stitch this with the right sides facing out using a very narrow 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to turn it inside out and stitch again with a slightly wider seam allowance to fully encase that seam. Now I'm going to turn it inside out. I do like to press these seams, so I'm going to go ahead and press them, and then I'll stitch down each side again to fully encase that, and that is known as a French seam.